Oh, happy day. I'm super excited about this video. I'm Nootsie, and the title of this video is 3 Steps for Expanding Your Awakening. And the reason I'm excited is because this is kind of a follow-up from my most favorite video thus far entitled, I See Dead People. And in that video, we talked about how medicine and science and spirituality all line up with the fact that we are hardwired in our brain for spirituality and to have an awakened brain. And what they have found and what they all agree on is that 1/3 of it is genetically inherited, meaning we get some of the neural network based on what our family of origin, how they practiced, and then 2/3 of it is through the grit of development. So if we so choose, we can bring those neural networks in our nugget online and we can tune in to synchronicities and flashes of insight and inspiration. So we're going to talk about the 3 steps for expanding your awakening. This neural network is actually called VAN, or ventricular attention network. And the more we use it, the stronger it becomes. Just like if you were training your bicep, the more you use your bicep, the stronger it becomes. And what it does, it helps us with the knowing of objects or things beyond our vision. And what is really cool about it, actually brings back online the same neural pathway when we were an infant and we were cared for and comforted. And so literally, we end up feeling psychologically cared for in our thinking, and then physiologically, we have the same response as we did when we were infants, just by firing this ventricular attention network, or VAN. And so even though I had the granddaddy supersized awakening experience and healing, I always had a gut level knowing that it wasn't because I was special or that other people couldn't have it, or even that it was a one-time experience. And so since that happened to me in Niagara Falls at the Dr. Joe event, it has put me on a course or a trajectory that I have been trying to find practical ways to staying on the path and continuing with my awakening experience. It really is our divine right as children of the soil, and it is given to us as part of our pristine blueprint, this hard wiring, to have vibrant vitality and health and wholeness, and to feel guided and cared for and loved, and to never feel alone. So a healthier awakened brain is defined as a brain that is engaged in a spiritual life. It has grit and optimism and resilience while providing insulation against addiction, trauma, and depression. It really doesn't have to be this Roman candle, day of Pentecost on the inside, or Kundalini awakening. What's really great is it can be attained or accomplished by a daily practice. A spiritually aware or spiritually awakened brain to perceptions powers down that loopy thinking portion of the brain where we worry and we feel anxiety and there's self-sabotage. It's that portion of the brain that ruminates and gets stuck in a gear where we can only think about stress, and we tend towards cravings and anxiety. We have dread, and there are addictions and fear and regret, and we feel so disconnected and isolated, and there's a lot of despair and uncertainty. But what's fascinating is you compare the non-awakened brain to one that has the ventricular attention network online. Well, the non-awakened brain, the outer portion is really thin, and so it doesn't provide a lot of protection. But the one that has the VAN, or the ventricular attention network online, the outer portion is much thicker, so it provides a tremendous amount of protection against depression and trauma. And we've talked a lot about brainwave states, that when we are in beta, or when we are stuck in this gear of stress and anxiety, we are in the fight, flight, or freeze mode, and you can't get to a solution from there. And so in order to awaken the brain and to expand our awareness and to increase our perceptions, we have to do something different than what we have done in the past. Step number 1 of expanding our awakening is practicing not thinking. Nada, zero, zip, niet, nine, none, no thinking. Yes, we want to slow our brain waves down, but it's really about practicing no thought. And I'm not talking about in a meditative state. I'm talking about doing it with your eyes open. And it's really helpful if you can do it while you're walking or at least out in nature. But when you're walking forward, what happens is because your eyes are going back and forth, it actually tricks the brain into thinking that you're making progress. But practicing no thought with your eyes open, what happens then is you create space in your brain for flashes of inspiration and insight to drop into your brain. Because when we're in beta and we have those jagged brain waves, there's no room for any kind of divine inspiration to drop in. And so how I do it is I get up really early when it's dark outside and there's no one else out there, so I don't have to be like, hi, 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 hi. So I go outside. I don't even put my contacts in. I don't brush my teeth. And I go out and I walk and I just listen. I listen for the crickets. I listen for the wind. Now, in the beginning, I had a ton of thoughts bubbling up or a ton of thoughts dropping in that were not productive. And instead of getting aggravated at myself about it, I just let them roll on past. And I would bring my mind back to listening for the crickets and listening for the birds and looking for the wind in the trees. Now, they call it a practice because it takes practice, but it's super valuable to do it when you are outside and when you are able to tune in to nature with your eyes open. The heart and the emotion that we feel in the heart at any given time is like the radio, and then the mind is the tuning knob that follows the emotions that we're feeling in our heart, and it picks up on the channels that go with our emotions. So for this step, we're just going to turn that bad boy off. We're not going to practice any thoughts. We are just going to walk with our eyes open, and we are going to practice not thinking. It sounds easy, but in the beginning, it really is difficult because your mind will bombard you and try to lead you astray. So just remember, it's a practice. You're going to walk with your eyes open and you're going to listen and you're not going to think. And then step number 2 is to develop a vision of who you want to become or your future self. Now, in the beginning for me, when I started doing Dr. Joe's work and he talked about this, I had absolutely positively no idea of what I wanted to be when I grow up or what I wanted to become or what I wanted my future self to look like. So what I started to do then is I started to go for the emotions that I wanted to feel in my future self. And so things for me were like freedom, and I wanted to have a community of people that were like-minded, and I wanted to have a lot of energy. So what I have done then is I just have this notebook that I put lots of pictures in it of the person that I am becoming and the person that I am now and how I want to expand that. And it really is valuable to begin to develop this vision of your future self. And then what I do is I set an alarm on my phone and it goes off every 54 minutes. And when that alarm goes off, I just drop down into my body and I notice my posture. Like when we are in fight, flight, or freeze, we have diminished capacity to breathe and our posture is poor and we're squinting our eyes. Our physiology is a good indicator of where our thought process is. So every 54 minutes when that alarm goes off, I don't do it very long, but I just take a few minutes, I drop down, I stop, drop, and roll, I drop down into my physiology, I slow down my breathing, I soften my gaze and I just try to check in with, am I carrying myself as my future self? And I try to begin to walk as my future self. And a lot of times I'll even grab my notebook and look at those pictures in there. It doesn't have to be this long process, but because I get sidetracked, I found that especially during my working day, every 54 minutes is about the right amount of time for me to do this little bitty check-in. The Board of Directors 3.0 is a combination of many different traditions and methods that I've just kind of combined together to make it really practical and easy to use, and you can use it on a regular basis. And so how I do it is I use this either before I go to bed or right while I'm in bed or during my quiet time or even a meditation. But I've used this so much I can actually do it when I have a long drive. But how I start is I drop down into my heart, and a really good way to start that is just to put your hand on your heart, and then you want to bring up a non-controversial picture of something that makes you smile, like a kitten or a puppy. So you have your hand on your heart, you bring this picture up, and then you're going to bring to mind this table that you're going to have this board of directors sit around. And it took me a bit to find just the perfect table. So here's a picture of that table, and then I invite all of these people in, and they can be alive or deceased, but it's people who hopefully have your best interest at heart, or at least someone who you really respect, and that could provide you with some valuable insight. So in the beginning, it was people like my mom and my dad and Jesus and Napoleon Hill and Saint Therese of Lisieux and Wayne Dyer, but it really has changed out over time depending on what I'm going to ask. But you sit down at the head of the table, and then you go around and ask each person, do you love me? And in the beginning, it would just fill me with emotion, because I would ask my mom and I would ask my dad, who have long since passed, do you love me? And the things that they would say would just fill me with joy. So you go around and you ask each person, and then you put on the version of yourself that is the highest possible version. You know, in the Bible it says we were created before the foundation of the world to be in Christ. And so there's this version of yourself that is divinely connected to God with no barriers. And so how I do it is I imagine myself putting on this beautiful robe with this high collar, and it's encrusted in jewels. And I put this robe on and I ask myself, do you love me? And it's amazing the things that I will say and the insights that I will have. And then I ask my higher power or source, or normally it's Jesus, do you love me? And it's amazing the things that my imagination will come up with. And then what you're going to do is you're going to ask the pertinent questions of the things that you're trying to get insight on. In the beginning, when I was fumbling and bumbling through this and trying to really expand my awakened brain and use my imagination in a different way, I would ask questions like, what do I need to know? And sometimes I wouldn't get anything. Or I would ask, is there something that you need to tell me? And sometimes some of them would say something, and sometimes others of them would say nothing. And then I would say, how do I proceed in this particular situation that I was wondering about? And a lot of times the answers were very, very simple in the beginning. But then what happened as I started to have synchronicities when I would go away from my board of directors meeting in my life, and I would see that I was beginning to get guided, and I was beginning to get insight, and I was having flashes of inspiration. And so I started to have some different guests show up, and I started to have more complex answers to my questions. And I can tell you it was nothing short of miraculous. Sometimes the answers that I would get, they would be so far above my pay grade. A lot of times they were science heavy, and I was like, shoot, I wish I had paid attention to science in school a little bit more. But it really has been an awareness expanding and awakening expanding exercise that I use. It really has been almost to the point of miraculous. And it really doesn't take long for it to happen. It just takes practice. So when you start doing it, if you don't get anything, just keep one ear tuned and one eye opened during your day to see if you're going to get some insights. It really is fun. I think if you try it, you will really like it. You just can't give up. You just have to begin to use your imagination in a different way and bring that ventricular attention network online. It's your divine, God-given right, and it's really fun. So I would love to hear from you if you try it, or if you have any questions, please reach out. I have lots of good questions and lots of things that I have tried that have been very, very helpful. But until next time, I hope you have a Board of Directors 3.0 meeting. I hope you expand your awakening, and I hope that you are blessed. Bye-bye.